Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here with my friend and colleague Jim Gurley. And Jim and I had a pretty good pregame conversation, and he brought to the table a couple of really good ideas. The one we're going to talk about today, it falls into the category of one's worldview, and it's a Latin phrase. I'll probably botch the pronunciation, but it's Amore Fati, and I'm going to read the Google definition. Amor fati is a Latin phrase that translates to love of fate or love of one's fate. It's a philosophy or an attitude that involves accepting and embracing all of life's experiences, including suffering and loss, as good or necessary. It's often associated with Stoicism. And the other phrase that I think, Jim, is directly related that you provided was the phrase that might be more familiar to us: things happen for you, not to you. Means that life is happening for a reason and that people have the power to make choices and take control of their lives. And, we talk an awful lot, Jim, about personal accountability, self acceptance, self awareness. And boy, this kind of hits all of those points. And there's some bullets about suggestions about how you might apply these concepts, and let's take them on one at a time. But before we do that, would you please share the where this came from?
Yeah, sure, Mark. It's a backstory, a short backstory, but again, just having a conversation with some very good friends. One of them, every year when the baseball season ends, we have a conversation, and this one turned out to be, an hour and a half conversation about a lot of different things. And he mentioned that he asked me what books I was reading, and we exchanged books. And he says he was reading some stuff on Stoicism, and of course, there's just so much great stuff, right, about Stoicism. So we, yeah, we kind of talked about a lot of things, and then I remember this phrase. In fact, I saw it years ago. Um, I may have been in Italy. It was in the back of a boat, but I've also seen it on back of more than one boat,
Mm-hmm.
and the term was Amore Fate, the Italian version, Amore Fate. So it means love of fate, or the second version is love of one's fate. Which then really I did kind of a deep dive, I started going more into it, and you read the definition. So, but it turns out there's another version of it too. There's a Japanese version, and it's known as a Japanese worldview, wabi sabi, and their description of that is a search for meaning in the imperfect or incomplete. Take control of your emotions and how you respond to things that happen to you in the world. So when I saw the word imperfect, it immediately associated to our podcast, the Imperfect Men's Club. The imperfection is the perfection, and that's the Japanese version of it. And then I just said, hey, what's an American version? And that's when I came up with things happen for us, not to us.
Yep.
And there's a lot in that because that is a choice. I think we would agree that people have a victim mentality, aren't the most pleasant people to be around.
Yep. Yep. That's
And
a it's there's a lot of that going around right now,
it
and
isn't there. Yes, yes,
I
it's
think
very
it's a I think it's a great topic because
yeah.
not to be presumptuous. I mean, we all make mistakes. We all have challenges. We all do the wrong thing or make a bad decision here and there. But I think that, as we were talking about earlier, I think what I try to do, and it's not easy, but I try to do it, is instead of saying it's his fault or it's her fault or it's the circumstance's fault or I was just unlucky. It's like you're totally giving control away of your happiness. It's just
Mhm.
like, no, I'm human. I made a mistake. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to be self aware about it, self accountable to it. And I'm going to say things like, how did that happen? And what can I do to preclude it from happening again? And then what else can I take away from it as a learning experience? And,
Mhm.
you and I talk about this all the time. Everything's a choice. And I don't understand why people make the other choice, but quite a few people do.
You do. And it also reminds me of a quote that we use on this podcast quite often. And it's we get bitter or we get better. it is a choice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it falls right into that one as well. The other one, I know when I speak to my players or the young men that are part of my former high school, and that it's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to what happens to you, right?
Yeah.
It's such an important lesson that you can learn that early on in life. Don't wish it was easier, wish you were better.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It is a way of thinking.
It's
And
interesting how cliches are cliches for a reason, you know, and
yes,
and
yeah.
and the bitter or better one, I've stolen that quite a few times since you first laid it on me.
I'm going to put this one here. Things happen for us, not to us.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's going to go right up to the top of the list because it says so much about how you respond to things. And I think there's times in life when you feel like things are happening to you,
Sure.
and and you push back and you're mad and you're angry and you blame people, and yeah, you're just an asshole, right? You just become a big asshole. And
Yeah.
but there's a certain person that has this worldview that has somewhat of a calmness to them too, right?
Well, you
That
know, we've talked about this before. This lesson I learned from my dad at a young age about what do you do when a engine catches on fire when you're flying a plane is nothing. It's this pause
Mhm,
that for me allows me to step back
mhm,
into a state of objectivity when something makes me scared or angry or anxious and say, no, reacting to that immediately is going to be bad. So give it
mhm,
some context and some thought, let some time elapse. And as I've told
mhm,
you many times, sometimes it's seconds, sometimes it's minutes, sometimes it's days.
mhm.
Um, it doesn't really matter. It's just like don't react to that right now.
Right.
That'll
Or
be the
don't react emotionally.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think that's the key. The difference between a reaction is don't just have an emotional reaction, right? You said if you have to pause and collect yourself, it does make a difference. So yeah, so in the process of this just deep dive I did, I came up with 10 words that the 10 words that make Amore Fate part of yourself, ourself, which of course, everything we talk about every week is the flywheel of life, but in the center is ourself and self-awareness. So here's the 10 words that make in that I've chosen to use when describing Amore Fati. So number one, again, that I could do a whole sentence, but I'm just going to do the short version of it. So number one is and again, I know you do this every day, is gratitude, right? I know you've been doing it for a couple of years now, right? You have a daily uh meetup or group. What is it again that you do?
he calls it a huddle, which is kind of
Okay.
cool. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's yeah, I've been doing it for a year and a half now, and it's been really helpful. And gratitude is at for all intents and purposes at the center of it. You
Of
know,
course.
stay
Yeah.
revisit
Yeah.
that. You know,
Yep. Yep. So number one is gratitude, which again, that takes work, waking up every day and having gratitude for those things and being grateful. That's a part of it. Number two is presence. Remember, we
mm-hmm,
talk about this, right? Be present.
mm-hmm.
The greatest gift you can give another human being is your presence.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
and I
I was just writing about paying attention. I can't remember what the context was, and it was a couple things came up, and one of the things that came up from me was like how young people, and it's a generalization, it's a stereotype, which
yeah.
are always, you know, kind of not correct all the time,
Mhm.
but they're looking at their phone to the point where
That's
they're gonna grow
yep.
up with hunched shoulders because they walk around looking down at their phone and
Yeah.
missing out on the whole world and
Well,
opportunities and mentorships and it's
yeah.
just crazy to me and it's
Mark,
unfair to
I could not agree with you more. This is not one of those things, just a couple old guys, complaining about the good old days or about how bad these young kids are. This is a problem. And you can see it. They cannot put their phones down. It's a complete addiction and they're not present.
no it takes away everything we've just talked about is virtually impossible if you are led around by your phone. You just
That's right. Right.
can't
So
get there.
this couldn't be more relevant than ever before in time to give somebody your presence. That means you're not looking at your phone. You're engaged. You're listening to what they say.
Yeah, but I also think because I always look to, the other side of things, try to be the devil's advocate, if you will. But the other people that are participating in this are parents and teachers, because, I don't know about you, but if I was a teacher, provided it wasn't against the law, or depending on what state I was in, every kid that walked into my classroom would drop his cell phone into a basket and pick
Well,
it up
that's
when he
actually
walked
happening.
out.
There's laws being passed in some states already, and I know California is getting ready to pass it pretty soon because it's so much of a problem for
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, but moving on. Number three, embrace. So yeah, you embrace things. You don't fight everything. You embrace what it is, and,
Hmm.
and you accept it. You embrace it. Um, Number three, response. Yeah, of course, right? It's not what happens to you in life, it's how you respond to what happens.
Hmm.
Uh, Number five, peace. Uh, Probably something you do. I know you with your spirituality and your faith, that helps, right? Get
It certainly does. Yeah, peace of mind for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
just being, and all of these are so connected. It's crazy.
yeah. Number six is meaning. I have a hyphen suffering. I think what I was trying to communicate there was there is suffering is part of life, and there's meaning to suffering. So
Yeah. What's the book written by the guy that was a Holocaust victim about
mhm.
meaning the meaning of life?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Victor Frankl or something. Is that what it is?
Victor Frankl. Yeah, that's a great book. That's a reread a couple
Yeah,
times in your lifetime.
yeah, yeah. It is. It also shows that. Well, I'll kind of come back to this. The next one sets this up, but suffering is part of life, and
Hmm.
anybody that has ever lived will experience some suffering. So
Hmm.
not to have suffering, it's not as if you want it to happen, but it also humanizes you. It humbles you. It makes you human. And so
Well, I
suffering doesn't have to be seen as just bad.
no, no. I think it's also I think suffering is to your point, we all experience it, and it's difficult, but coming out the other end of suffering, it hardens you in a good way, right? It makes you stronger, you know.
yeah.
And I think all of these situations, as I'm listening to you talk about them, choice, that's a choice, that's a choice, that's a choice.
Oh yeah.
I
That's why I
have
said these
total,
were the 10. These are choices that you can
yeah,
live by. You don't have to, but
yeah.
if you're aware of them. So number seven, it's a big one. Forgiveness.
Hmm. Yeah. When we talk
Yeah.
about forgiveness, or I think when people in general talk about forgiveness, I think the default is to forgive other people, but I think equally as important is the ability to forgive yourself. And
Well, then you'll
I think that's harder for me.
you'll appreciate number eight, which is self-compassion, which is part of forgiveness, right? For
Hmm.
self-forgiveness.
Hmm.
No, going back to forgiveness, it takes a lot of work to forgive somebody that is have wronged you. You don't know
Hmm.
their circumstances, but um, that doesn't come easy for me. I know that some people say, well, don't forgive them for them, forgive them. You benefit for forgiving somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I've got a little bit of experience with that one, as you know. But I will tell you, one of the things that we do in
Have
this
you
little,
forgiven her?
I think so. Yeah, I think
Really?
so.
A hundred percent? I mean, out
I
of
don't, I don't think 100%. I think, let me put it this way.
well, what
I think
percentage? If you could, you give me a percentage, so I
no, I'm
appreciate.
like 90, I'm like 90 something. And because I think
Okay, you're in the '90s. That's
it's
good.
enough that I never think about it or her
Mhm.
without her intervening in the lives of my children, or the impetus never comes from me anymore. It's never like, man, I'm just angry about that. I don't even think about it. And as
Yeah,
soon as you can get a point where, until you're reminded of it, you don't think about it anymore. I think that's as far as you need to go. The exercise is over. You can just keep practicing. At least
yeah,
that's how it feels to me.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I think self-compassion they go together.
Yeah,
So
they do.
this was an interesting one. I was surprised how, and I've shared this with people how they respond to this. Number nine, mundane beauty.
Mm.
Mundane beauty.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to
My,
find the
my,
beauty in the mundane.
my I just have to think about my dad, and the way I phrase it with him is still at the age of 96. He has this ability to be engaged with anything new, a new story from one of his grandchildren, a new grandchild, a new anything new that he's unfamiliar with, he comes at it with this childlike wonder. And
Mhm.
I think that's very similar to recognizing the beauty in the mundane. And what it does is it makes the deliverer of the message just feel wonderful because he's so childlike in his wonder. That's cool.
Yeah, I was surprised how everybody reacts to that one differently, and how profoundly they react to it. But the mundane beauty was it reminded me that life isn't a highlight film, right? It's not. It Most of life is kind of boring,
It's
and
practice. Most of life is practice. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean as far as practice. I see what you're saying. It's practice, the practice field. That's mundane, right?
Yeah.
Going to practice every day is mundane.
The weight room. Yeah. It's all the stuff
I
no one sees. Running the stairs.
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not every day is game day.
Yeah. It's not. You're not holding up the World Series trophy. It's like this.
Yeah,
There's a little work to do before you get there.
yeah, and it's very mundane.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
So
Yeah.
find the beauty in the mundane.
Yeah. That's great.
I think it's pretty cool, that one. Yeah. And then the last one, and we talk about it all the time, and that is authenticity. So,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and I think every time we use the word authentic, you have to follow up with inauthentic,
Yeah.
which describes our vice president.
Yeah. Among other world supposed leaders, I
I
suppose,
had to throw that in there. I know we try not to make this a political show, but
Hey man, you're not going to get any flack from me for saying that.
when I think of inauthentic people,
Yeah.
she's the first one to come to mind. And there's a few
Yeah.
others, but
Yeah, there's too many, and I think well, let me grab on a couple of these bullets that you sent in this other because we've covered some of them, but they're
yeah.
interesting as well. They're the same thing. How might one apply
Mhm.
this notion of appreciating that things happen for you and not to you, and that a love of one's fate are supported by all of these are the way to apply
Mhm.
these things to life. Would one of them that I've got in front of me here is just the ability to accept things. And I
Mhm.
think that's when something's happened,
Yeah.
I think you kind of have to get to acceptance as soon as possible. And
Yeah.
I think there's 5 stages of grief, and acceptance is at the beginning of that process. And I think it sounds simple, but I think it's difficult to accept certain things because certain things you're just like, why the fuck did that happen?
Yeah.
What did I do to deserve that? That's
Yeah.
an easy place to go.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
it's another one says explore your reactions when something happens. Try to explore your reaction and why it exists. And if that's not self awareness, and I don't know what is.
Yeah.
And then after you explore how you're reacting and why you're reacting that way, maybe change your reaction
Mhm.
because of what you said earlier, Jim. It's not what happens to you; it's how you react to it, how you respond to it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the last one, I suppose, for the purposes of this is I really like this is find the grace. Look for the grace in every moment,
Mhm.
even
In the
even during
mundane. The
even in the
word
mundane.
mundane, you just don't hear it very often, but
Yeah.
it's
I know that we drag my divorce into conversations pretty readily, but I think that the thing that I'm thinking about now, and you said something about it earlier, I can't remember what it was, but it was like you don't really know what someone else is going through, I think is what you said. And the way that I got as far into forgiveness as I did is I kept thinking to myself, you know what was around her growing up. You know how difficult it was for
mm.
her, how many bad things were
Oh,
done to
interesting.
her,
Yeah.
how she was mistreated.
So
And
maybe
when
there
you,
was the forgiveness component to that, right?
well, I think it's the way that I got there. I think it's like,
Yeah.
look, this is a perfect example of if you said to anybody who knew nothing about her and nothing about me, I'm going to give you 10 things that happened to her before she was the age of 12 years old. You would be like, oh my God, I can't believe she's not out of her fucking mind. Well, the matter of fact, she is, but that's why.
Yeah.
And I think if you can do that, I know if I can do it with somebody and just say, someone does something stupid or does something irritating or something, if you can just pause and look at them and go, that must be because of something that really has nothing to do with me, because that person's reaction to me was not based on anything that I did or said in the moment. It was stored up based on something that already happened to them. And I can speculate on what it was, but if I go there, I think that's how you get to the grace piece. At least
Yeah.
that's what it
Yeah.
feels like to me.
That's interesting. That's the one you went to. The one that I went back to a few times was embrace. And again, I add a second word to it. Embrace adversity. That's that's well, I think it's personal to everybody. It's particularly personal to me because I've had some adversity, right? And if you embrace it, it's not fun. I don't like it. I don't recommend it. But one thing about it is if you can overcome it, if you embrace it and you overcome it, boy, you come out the other end even better if you
Yeah, and
can.
the other thing, and it's a common thread through my
Mhm,
my huddle, my
mhm,
daily gathering. I try to do it all throughout the day,
mhm,
and I try to do because I again I'm thinking of my dad. He says his rosary, 3 times a day, goes to church every day. There's a consistency in what he does,
mhm.
and connected to that word practice, right? It's like I think that all of these things we just talked about, you don't just get into a state of embracement or whatever the word might be, or grace, and stay there. I
Mhm.
think you have to continuously remind yourself of these concepts. And I do it with meditation and breath work and exercise and prayer. But I think you have to find a way to make these things consistently aware in your life, because they can
Yeah.
come and go quickly.
Yeah, yeah,
They
Mark,
did.
that's why when I started to put this together, how much it, as you said in the very beginning of this episode, it falls into worldview. And that just because you have a worldview doesn't mean you can't change it, make it better. Uh, Most importantly, be self-aware of it
Yep.
and tweak it. So yeah, it's 100% in the self-awareness. I think you just go a layer deeper or a layer out about how much of this affects our life every day. How
Yeah,
we.
I think in general, and this is kind of related. I think for the most part, if you're making big decisions emotionally, you're more often than not making bad decisions. And I think that
Yeah,
because all these things are emotional, that's inherently challenging, So I think I really lean on that pause thing, and I teach that. I emphasize that. It resonates with people. Most people are like, oh, you've never created a really nasty email response and not hit send, and you open it up the next day and you're like, I'm not fucking sending that.
yeah, yeah. Well,
It
and
was
the
just,
other thing is that we talk about these worldviews. They're timeless. They're going back
yeah,
to the Stoics. We're talking about this. The Japanese. They've been around a little bit longer than us, right?
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
part
Well,
of
I think,
this is Western, let's just say American social construct, American way. That's why I wanted to do my version. Or I call it the American version, and it's again, it's not things happen for us, not to us. It simplifies it. But this is timeless wisdom of how to live your life.
it is the other thing that's kind of coincidental is in my huddle yesterday, we were talking about the concepts of the many of which we've just talked about here, whether
Mhm,
whether it's grace or forgiveness or you know um, any of these conditions. And Troy put it up, like, I don't know, there's maybe 10 kind of belief systems or religions down the left hand side, and then across from left to right, the components of all those religions. There's a higher power, right?
mhm.
And there's flow, there's surrender, there's all these things, all the good stuff, the stuff that will help you move towards a more fulfilled life. And I'm going to try and always use fulfilled now instead of happy because of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. But the other one, if you don't mind, while you're at it, don't be nice, be kind.
Oh yeah. Oh
Right?
yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I want a kind person around me. I don't like nice people
Yeah.
because
No, I,
nice, you find that people that are nice are not very nice. They're surface
well,
level nice. I'd rather have kind people that tell you the truth so you know what's going on and you can,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
No, it's nice is inauthentic, you know?
yeah, 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 absolutely.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, look, I don't, our intention here is not to get up on a soapbox. I think our intention here is to go, if you're a middle-aged guy living in this country particularly, but maybe anywhere, depending on the
mhm,
culture, um, you're going through the same shit. You're dealing with the same stuff. And
absolutely.
the good decisions are good for everybody. And the
Mhm.
bad decisions are pretty bad for everybody. So if you can bring consistency to even a couple of these things, I think you end up with a smile on your face more often than not.
Yeah. I also think we call it the imperfect men's club because it's about be a man, right? You have a lot of boys right now. They act like boys and they're
Hmm.
emotional and they get their feelings hurt. There is something to say for being a man, and a man, like I said, stays calm in difficult circumstances for the better of others, for the good
Hmm.
of others.
Hmm.
And it makes a difference. Just use your father and your brother as pilots. You don't want them being emotional when they're flying uh, an aircraft with 400 people on it, right?
No, no, no. That brings us to the next topic, DEI. No.
That's
No,
pretty good.
that was a fun discussion, Jim. I enjoyed that. We could have taken. There's probably a lot of subtopics in there we can kind of reflect on and maybe circle back around with them next
Yeah.
episode or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I do like this one. What says the search for meaning in the imperfection. Here's the one that threw me for a loop, and we'll wrap up on this one. Or incomplete. So the imperfection is the perfection. I get that. I've been saying it's our tagline for a podcast, but or the incomplete. I I I like to finish things, but sometimes not completing something at the moment and then coming back to it when like you said, you've had some time to think about it, it's even better. And
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, but I also think of another angle on incomplete, and that is, in business they say get it to 85, 90%
oh yeah,
complete and then ship it. Because the feedback that you get from shipping the 90% complete allows you to get it to 98 or 99% in the second iteration. And that's a
100%.
very,
I'm all for that. What just to add what you're saying, Mark, it's that your complete is 80%. You then hand it off to somebody to do the 20%, but you
mhm.
never try to get 100%. It's
Yeah,
such an important part of that, but it's just defining what complete is.
yeah,
And of
yeah.
course,
It's
but it is. I appreciate what you're saying. Is there's no such thing as 100%, but you've got to ship it and to improve on it.
Yep,
That you're right. That's kind of tying back to the incomplete part. It's never complete. It's
right.
never ever 100% complete or
Yeah,
perfect.
having an expectation of completion is a fool's errand, I guess you could say.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, so look at this
Uh,
podcast.
yeah. All right, dude. We'll catch up next
All
week.
right, all
See
right.
ya.